Any second now, Dr. Bruce Scott, everybody, psychoanalyst, author of Gulag Caledonia. Bruce has been on with us many times. It was Bruce who introduced me to the term menticide, which gave me clarity to what we were going through. Good morning, Bruce. Lovely to see you. Sorry we're a bit late. Won't cut into your time. But there's so much to discuss with you this morning because it's all popping off, isn't it? And I want to start, first of all, with you about critical race theory, because this is going everywhere. Can you give people a very sort of rough, brief idea about what critical race theory is and why it seems to be taking over schools?
Critical race theory is a kind of postmodern philosophy that's arisen in recent times. Critical race theories related to queer theory, that kind of thing, deconstruction of kind of societal norms, for example. And this is a definition, a loosely organized framework based on the premise that race is not natural. It's not natural, biologically grounded, and it's a socially constructed thing. And essentially, they want to erase all hierarchies. But it focuses on, as we are seeing in at the moment in society, on whiteness, on a kind of that whiteness is a problem, and this is shown itself in educational policies, especially in Scotland, but all over the world.
Exactly, and the thing is that have I got this correct? That the idea is that white people are inherently racist.
That is essentially the premise. If you look through the documents, like for example of Education Scotland, there's a critical race theorist, activist, academic called Khadija Mohammed. The essential idea is that being in Scotland, which is predominantly 97% white, is essentially racist because of that. This is a quote from one of our articles about whiteness. Conversations about racism and whiteness are missing within education in Scotland. I mean, and she says things like, I learned, she's a teacher as well, she trains as a teacher, I learned how to play white. I mean, it's an incredible statement. I mean, I used to work in London, in Wembley, in a place, and I was the only white member of staff.
I lived in Wembley. I know Wembley very, very well. Yeah. Absolutely. I was in a minority, 100%.
And you know, and it was I mean, there was no problem, and I worked out also down the Elephant and Castle, at the University of the university down there. I forgot the name of it, but that was predominantly black and ethnic minority students.
This is a very dangerous message that's being sent out, and it's being sent out from the high education. You'd sent me a tweet, Dr. Sarah Lou. And Dr. Sarah Lou is just sat there saying, just an ordinary day at the office, sipping coffee from this early Christmas present. And she's holding a mug saying mediocre white man tears. Why is this okay?
Well, this is the point. Now, the Education Scotland are pushing this critical race theory in schools for primary school children. Now, this is a university academic, Dr. Sarah Lou, Edinburgh University, the Politics and International Relations Department. She put this out, and I noticed it, mediocre white man tears. And I said, well, that's anti-white racism and sexism, misandry.
Yeah.
And I was completely attacked on social media by other people, notably academics from other places in Britain, saying that I was a misogynist. And keep going, Dr. Sarah, fantastic. Where can I buy this cap? It was openly being celebrated. And so I've done a few tweets to Dr. Sarah Lou saying, will you apologise for this anti-white racism? And she's now blocked me. But I was very serious about it. So I wrote to the principal of Edinburgh University saying, does Edinburgh University condone or condemn anti-white racism? Is it nourishing and supporting this kind of culture? Because, you know, what kind of message does it put out to white people in Scotland and or males who want to go to Edinburgh University? Is there a culture there where it's got to be okay for people to have anti-white racist comments and anti-male comments.
Horrendous. One of your tweets said, I'm sure her white male students love this banter. If I was white and male, I'd be fairly horrified to be taught by this woman, because it would be obvious from the get-go that she hated me. That is what comes over. She may not. Sarah Lou, feel free to contact Rise and tell us you don't hate white men, but from all intents and purposes, it would appear that you do.
Well, yeah, well, yes, she tripled down on this. She tripled down, and was putting out several tweets saying, you know, obviously she stands by this statement, which I find incredible. I mean, if I went to a foreign country and you know, imagine if I'd sat in a university department in a foreign country and I had a cup with the words changed and certain words changed, and you know, I would be sacked. If I did it in Edinburgh University, I would be sacked. If I put fragile black woman's tears, I'm sure I would be disciplined at the very least. You know?
And people would be arguing with you about, you know, about racism and why it's acceptable. It cannot be acceptable. And I'm somebody who's fought against racism as long as I can remember, but it cannot be acceptable to be anti-white either. That's not a good balance. That doesn't balance up the situation. That's the impression I get, Bruce. It's almost like if we sling enough stuff and say enough bad things about white people, it will balance up the problems of history. These people are fairly ridiculous.
Well, it's a kind of Orwellian thing. It's like you know, war equals slavery, war equals freedom, war equals peace, kind of thing. It's like people, these critical race theories, they say things like you can't be racist against white people.
Yeah, I've heard that many times.
So, well, why can't you be? Well, of course.
Yeah.
If you read the Khadija Mohammed's article, I learned how to play white. I mean, when I worked in Wembley, I didn't learn to play black. You know, and she says other things like the education system in Scotland centres on whiteness ideology. What a ridiculous thing to say.
Well, if there's anywhere in the world that I would say is sort of ahead of the curve and not necessarily in a good way, it would be in Scotland, right? In terms of this sort of stuff. So I doubt that statement hugely. I really doubt it. I mean, Bruce, what the hell is going on in Scotland? I mean, we've heard now, and it's made the headlines, but it's also a story that you were very interested in. And it's about this whole idea that we're expecting children now to accept a gender identity. And this, again, is being pushed through. SNP has been all over the news this week by, you know, voting through that people can self-ID as any gender they want. What the hell is happening in Scotland, Bruce?
Well, yeah, well, this is part of the same philosophy, critical race theory, queer theory. It's postmodern ideology with cultural Marxism, with the aim of deconstructing things like family, marriage, tradition, culture, community, etc., etc. And this questionnaire, the first one that arose a week ago was Merkinch Primary School in Inverness.
Got it.
So 5-year-olds were being asked whether they identified as gay, lesbian, transgender, or whatever. And I messaged Miss Emma Roddick, the MSP of the area, and I said, this is highly inappropriate because children of that age are not able to process such highly emotive, sexualized adult information. And it's you know, it's harmful. Even, I mean, and I put in and I emphasize also heterosexual ideas.
Yes, let me just have a look at this survey. So they're asked if they are male, female, non-binary, transgender, or other. That's an extraordinary thing to ask primary school children who've just entered the education system.
That's straight out the cultural Marxist playbook. Wilhelm Reich talked about this in the 1930s, saying that if you can tap into a child's sexuality, you can capture them. And
wow.
So this, and he was a psychoanalyst, and so this is this theory that they're implementing in schools, because I know I've worked with victims of childhood sex abuse, and psychological childhood sexual abuse is very, very is just as serious as physical. Sometimes the psychological can be even worse. So you're introducing highly sexualized ideas to children, under the guise of, well, they're saying things like letting children be who they truly want to, who they are, their true gay selves or their true transgender selves. Well, that's a crazy statement, because how can a heterosexual child be their true heterosexual selves?
Right.
Well, because they're children.
Right. Right. I loathe the sexualization of children. It's been going on for a long time, but I've never known it so blatant. It's like so blatant. And so you have people like, what's her name? Mari. What's her for you?
Mari Black.
Mari Black, who's been at the forefront of all this. I remember when she brought a drag queen into school called Flowjob, right? So she's absolutely at the forefront of this. And they don't get it, do they? Or do they not get it? Or they just, what's wrong with these people?
Well, yeah, I wrote an article on that. It's on the UK Column website, Drag Queen Storytime, and Mari Black brought this adult drag queen with an extremely pornographic website, Flowjob. She was called Flowjob, and they called her Flowjob in the primary one school visit to read the story. And the thing was, the parents weren't informed about the visit of Mari Black and Flowjob, the drag queen.
Right.
And of course, the children couldn't consent to it.
No,
so it was foisted upon them. Now, this is a very interesting thing, because they go on about LGBT rights and things like that. And there's the whole other thing with the conversion practices or conversion therapy bill they want to push through for people, LGBT people, to not be able to access any psychological help or religious help to address any issues with their sexuality. They've got to say, even if LGBT people want to seek out some sort of thing to help them with their sexuality, they can't consent to it because they're not able to consent to it. But children are able to consent to being asked about their sexuality at 5 years old.
Right.
And children are able to sit with a drag queen for story hour. They're able to consent to that.
Yeah.
And children are able to consent to puberty blockers.
Yeah, absolutely. Bruce, where is this all going? Is it just, something's got to give. Something has to give. It's crazy out there.
Well, I think parents have to get active to see what's actually going on in the schools, and to start confronting their teachers, their head teachers of their children, either withdraw their children. But I mean, regarding the critical race theory, their idea is to go into schools in Scotland and tell little white boys and girls that they are inherently racist, and that their program, an intervention, which are not consenting to tell them that they need to root out their psychopathology of racism because they're white. Now that is essentially abuse. Now, if any activist, teacher, etc., comes in to tell their little child this, they should be reported to the authorities, or at least the council, or something like that. They need to fight back at this, because back in the 1990s, left-wing ideology regarding this sort of idea of labeling people with certain things,
right,
was regarded as inherently fascist.
Absolutely, it's insane.
Because I did some education modules at university, and it was like it seemed quite okay that a good idea that not to label children because it has a negative effect.
Absolutely, that's what I learned in psychology. And the thing is, Bruce, is that I feel I have a sort of dog in this race. My daughter's father was born in Jamaica. My daughter is mixed race. Half of my family are Black, and none of them want this. This seems to be white do-gooders pushing this kind of stuff.
I think, to be honest, the critical race theories in Scotland, I don't think they talk for the Black and ethnic minority community.
No.
And I don't think the Scottish government in all their sex education and trans agenda and all that, I don't think they actually talk for the LGBT or trans community, because in the conversion therapy bill, they're saying that adult LGBT identifying people cannot consent to something. They're saying They're infantilise them. I mean, this is essential. The end point of cultural Marxism and queer theory and critical race theory is that these groups making division in society, these policies and activists, ultimately, the people they're saying they're trying to help, they're not really. The end point is they're just useful for an agenda of oppression.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Bruce, I'm going to have to let you go there, which is always a shame. Dr. Bruce Scott, everybody. I can't recommend his book, Gulag Caledonia, strongly enough. Bruce, I want you to come back because I want you to make well, I always want you to come back, but I particularly want to come back quite soon to talk about COVID in retrospect and what it all means. Will you do that?
I will do, Sonia. No problem at all.
Excellent. Lovely to see you this morning, everybody. Dr. Bruce Scott. Take good care of yourself, Bruce.
Have
a good weekend.